Hey there, I'm Dane, and let's explore the kind of the bounds, intention, and possibilities for volunteering. So first, a little bit of context. One of the best ways to learn anything in life is to do it. And one of the best ways to do that is to be of service, to be useful while learning and doing. And there's a number of reasons for that. I'll share a couple of stories of my own. I found writing rather pointless in high school because you'd write these essays that were somewhat randomly assigned, meaning they weren't of particular interest to me, and they didn't seem to be particularly relevant to the teacher either. And so it's kind of a curriculum thing. And, you'd stay up all night writing an essay you weren't very interested in. I would. And then the teacher would stay up all night grading the essay, they weren't very interested in. And, it's not a very motivating proposition. And so I never did very well in essays in that context. But as soon as I left school and began writing for a magazine, well, suddenly I was picking the topic, very interesting topics. In fact, one of the topics I picked was about woofing, which is a global volunteer network in the sustainable field where people would, travel around as I had done and learn a little bit about organic farming in exchange for free room and board. Now, I picked carrots and I, turned hay in the tractor and picked potatoes and various things. This was a great way to learn because it actually mattered to someone. And that's one of the things that we all want, is to have an impact, a positive impact on a community, on people's lives. And it's unfortunately what doesn't happen in most of education. So the best way to learn is to do things. And the most meaningful way to learn is to do things while helping other people. Now, I learned to turn a compost and pick carrots and turn hay and drive a tractor and those types of things. But the opportunity that is here at Medicina, in my eyes, is 50 times more interesting and dimensional. And I'll go into a couple of the reasons. So one of the things that any enterprise has to do is be sustainable on a couple of different dimensions. One of them is economic, meaning if you have more money going out than is coming in for too long, your enterprise goes bankrupt. And so that's a dimension of design. Another is food. If you need more, if people are eating food faster than the food is coming in, you starve, right? And so there's there's the dimension of food. There's also the dimension of value, right? If your design, if your ecology does not become more and more valuable every year, if it instead depletes, because you don't really stay in stasis, if it gets less and less valuable every year, people leave. They don't want to go there. And so design is the process of intelligently blending, in a multi-dimensional level, a pattern of energy that brings in more money than is spent, a pattern of energy that brings in more food than is eaten, a pattern of energy that creates more value than it expends. And when we look then at ecological levels of design, it needs to be a pattern of energy that gives back to the earth more than it takes if we want a sustainable relationship with our planet, certainly a relationship in which the next generation inherits a healthier, more vital, more diverse planet than we have today. So this is a lot more interesting than picking carrots and turning hay, because we're looking at design. Now, the other thing that I didn't do in my woofing days was permaculture. I traveled around for, room and board and, and did chores, but there wasn't a lot of permaculture design. And in permaculture, you could think of it as permanent culture or permanent agriculture, a way of doing things that conserves energy and produces more value ecologically and otherwise. And so that's a whole, it's a very creative area, because there are so many ways to reintegrate energy. Another good way of looking at permaculture is the elimination of the delusion of waste, because all things that we call garbage or waste is a delusion, meaning it's not garbage or waste. It's energy in a form, meaning we went out to nature and we took energy in one form and we converted that energy into another form. And then we lack the imagination to take the next step and convert it back into a new functional form for us or back into the ecology. And rather than calling that the gap of imagination or the gap of intelligence, because that's really what it is, we're not saying a statement about it when we call something garbage. We're really talking about ourselves. We're saying, I don't know what to do with this thing. And so we really should be labeling ourselves the ones who don't know what to do with things, right? And then the obvious thing is, well, then figure it out, right? Come up with something innovative to do and solve your problem, the problem of lack of imagination or effort or creativity or understanding or technology. But instead, we project our inadequacy onto the energy that we created and no longer know what to do with. And we call it garbage. And this is unfortunate, because then we think the problem is with it. What do we do with this problem? The real problem is always in here. So, we're looking at creating a zero waste community. So we're transcending the cult dogmas, the dogma of inevitable garbage, right? What do we do with garbage? Well, this assumes that there is garbage. Well, that assumes that we will never have the intelligence to know what to do with the things that we create. And as long as we lack that intelligence, there will be an endless amount of energy that we convert into a form that we don't know what to do with. Well, that's a very interesting problem, because it requires a higher level of consciousness than the consciousness that comes up with the delusion of garbage. So one has to raise and challenge one's intelligence, one's consciousness, in order to solve that problem. Now, one of the big challenges in this whole field, the pioneering fields of all kinds, but certainly pioneering fields of innovative culture and organic and sustainable ecology, is that the purpose in doing this is not to make money, right? The primary purpose of clear cutting is to make money, right? Burn down a whole rainforest, throw some grass seed and grow cows for the next few years until erosion comes in, and sell it to McDonald's and make money. You do stuff like that with the primary goal of making money, right? Or you become a trucker and drive around, not because it's terribly inspirational or challenging, but to make money. So, these things you get bank loans for. But when your aim is to come up with intelligent design, when your aim is to restore ecology, there's no bank loans for that, because the focus, well, how are you going to make us a lot of money and return the loan? Well, maybe this will happen, maybe that will happen, but making money really isn't the goal. And so one of the challenges around creative projects of sustainable, intelligent design is you can't get bank loans for them. And so I can't get a bank loan to do, any of the stuff that I'm doing on Medicina. And it takes a while, meaning I'm 47 as I make this video. And most of my life, I would have dreamed and loved to be involved with a project like this, but I didn't have the money, and you can't get a bank loan. And so, as I think of my interest in this project as, when I was 15 and doing woofing, when I was 17 and doing woofing, when I was, 21 and learning landscape design and learning this skill and learning this skill, is these are incredibly useful, practical, valuable skills to learn and practice that, I didn't have money for at the time. I couldn't get a bank loan for at the time. And now I'm able to, quote, be the bank. And so there's, you get to practice. And if you're good, apply what you're learning with somebody else's money, with kind of a virtual bank. And I don't have an unlimited amount of money. And this is wonderful, because when you have an unlimited amount of money, you get sloppy, right? You don't have to challenge, have a very good design, right? And you just, there's always someone willing to work for a certain amount, for some amount of money. And you can do a whole range of things if you have, millions of dollars. But when you've just got $500 to solve a problem, $1,000 to solve a problem, you have to recycle more. You have to get to know your natural resources. You have to be creative. You may have to work harder, right? And this is great training, the discipline of not wasting energy, whether it's money or time or anything else. And that's a very good foundation to know how to do things on a budget, because that's also something you learn, right? If you have $500 and that's all you have, and the project ended up costing $600, then it's only, 90% done or 85% done, and you run out of money, and then it's not working, right? And so that's a really useful skill in business. A majority of small businesses run into cash flow problems. And so if you're wanting to learn about cash flow management, which is one of the more important things to learn as a successful entrepreneur, because at any point, if you have a big bill that you can't pay and you can't borrow any more money, you go out of business, you go bankrupt. And a large percentage of small businesses, I think 70 to 90% of small businesses go bankrupt in burnout. People burn out because they're not really into it and it's hard work. And they burn out because they spent all their money and they didn't manage cash flow. And so you get to practice those skills, as well. So let's look at the contexts here, what we're learning and exploring, etc. So permaculture design, organic vegetable and fruit growing. We're looking at the most inexpensive tiny homes that can be built in, that are also the most ecological, using aircrete and rebar. And so aircrete saves 90% of the cement, because aircrete is 90% air. right? And so you decrease the unsustainable resource, air is abundant, while simultaneously getting a number of benefits. So learning about aircrete is a very valuable technology. Learning about tiny houses, sustainable building, learning about things like Airbnb, learning how to cook, learning to invent recipes with what's growing in the garden. I loved learning to invent recipes as a teenager. I went to a boarding school and nobody knew how to cook there, and I was a vegetarian, and they were eating hot dogs and buns, and I couldn't eat that, so I had to learn to cook, right? And so these are useful skills: how to build a house, how to do electrical wiring, how to do plumbing, how to manage solar power, how to heat water sustainably, how to grow food. So it's very exciting. So let's, and then, I would say that, the continuum of of room is somewhere between glamping and living in an aircrete dome. So pretty rustic, but in a nicer piece of land than I've ever volunteered in my life. I flew to England and volunteered in biodynamic farms picking leeks, right? It's cold, rainy, not terribly inspiring, no hot springs, no river nearby. This is gorgeous, gorgeous weather, gorgeous country, magnificent beauty, peace and quiet, amazing for meditation. Your own river, 600 feet of river, just magnificent forests, fresh coconuts, it's just really magnificent. So that's the room portion of the room and board. The board, is a moving continuum, because as I make this video, we haven't even dug out, the weeds where the vegetable garden is going to go. And so that's going to take a little bit of time. But it's going to take some finesse, because when you do a new project, sometimes the varieties of vegetables you pick die. And so, well, that's the end of that. So it's going to take some work to get the board to increase off the land. One of the reasons I'm doing that is you can't buy organic food in Costa Rica. So we want to grow it. But, for now, board is what you like to cook at the supermarket. So that's the board. And then the learning opportunities is a mixture of what's needed at the time, what you're most passionate about. And by passionate, I don't just mean I'm passionate, show me what to do. I mean, I'm passionate, I've studied, I've got good ideas, I'm interested in learning this, I've watched a number of YouTube videos, I have thoughts about this, and I'm good at doing it, and I know how to use those tools, etc. And so, passion is somewhat disembodied if you don't have the discipline to actually bring that passion into a useful form. And so, one way to look at it is, a service to humanity. That's what Medicina is as a long-term project, where we explore the very best practices of doing things, and publish what works and what doesn't work, and eventually emerge at a recipe of conserving or of consuming very low amounts of energy and creating high levels of sustainable well-being. And you're welcome to look at that in the Dimensions area of 10xliving.org and go to the Dimensions area, and that's kind of the ideal. That's way up on the mountaintop. And you can kind of look at roles and things like that. But, at this point, it's an opportunity for you to learn and be of service and spend time in a wonderful culture and country. And so your submission should talk about, one, when you're available, two, how long you are available for. And this is really important because it's very possible with volunteering to actually sink energy into a volunteer relationship. Meaning if too many volunteers come and go and have a learning curve, and during the learning curve they break tools and waste time, and then by the time they figure out what they're doing, they go on to some other thing, you can be better off not having any volunteers than doing that. And so the longer the volunteering, the more likely it is that the energy that it takes to communicate, attune, and learn things, etc., is less than the energy that you invest with your skill and ideas and your hard work. So how long you're available for, what you're good at, and what you've accomplished along these lines. Now, for example, if you've written a book, you've got discipline and attention to detail and follow through. Well, those are good skills. If you've grown a garden before and have photos of that garden and talk about what you learned and this and that, the other. If you've done great research, a novice can do much better than an average professional if they're really into studying YouTube videos, talking to people, learning about opportunities, etc. So what have you done that might be useful as a skill set, directly or indirectly? How is this a good fit for you? And I'll talk kind of briefly about a couple of probabilities of good fit. So I went through a traumatic episode a few years back, and one of the greatest things would have been to know that I'm useful, to not have any expenses for a year, to be in a beautiful and healing environment to the degree that I interact with people, pleasant, but also peace and time alone, to spend time in nature. And just to know that I'm moving in the direction of my principles with helping a sustainable project, and I don't have to worry about money, and I don't have to be addicted on the internet and doing all these things. I don't have to be out driving and putting on a face, but I can just heal from trauma and work 6 hours a day and get better and better and build skill sets and self-image. So that's kind of one probability field for a really great fit. Another can be, writing. I just want to really write in a beautiful place and be alone and, just work 6 hours a day and do that, and then do my writing and not be disturbed by anyone, not be distracted, in a very beautiful place, right? And it's just beautiful. So then you've got permaculture students that want to practice stuff. They've taken a course or two, but they've never had the reins to try and pull something off. And so you've got a favorable mind, so you can come up with a sketch and an idea and say, this is what I think should be done and why. And here's how much it's going to cost in materials. And how many hours it's going to take me to do it. And I'd like the opportunity to do it. What do you think, right? Well, you can have that kind of a dialogue in a way that you may not have anywhere else that you know of on the planet, where you'd have the chance to build that and see how it works out. And then I want to be the steward for that for the next 6 months. I want to build an aquaculture pond, and I want to see how much money that can make or how many fish that can yield per square foot. And I want to see that for a year, and then I'll write about it, or you may be a blogger and want to write about these types of topics, and Or you may be with a new relationship, right? And you really want to spend some peaceful time together. So you get to work together and do something together and eat good food and let the relationship grow and blossom. There's a whole range of, of different people. You may be grieving, a loss of a loved one and want some time to peacefully be with your feelings while doing some good work. So, this is better than sitting around watching TV and getting fat and managing feelings. This is better than rushing around setting around the world and doing this. There's so many things that this is a great context for. But what I want to hear from you is, how's it a fit for you? How much time do you have? What do you know so far? What's your context in this experience? What would you like to bring to the project? Is there anything that you really need for it to be a fit for you, or versus not? And one of the, I think, thing that's also important to understand is how much experience and how well you do with latitude. Meaning, are you someone that does much better on your own and just checking in on WhatsApp, or do you want someone to write do this, this, and this tomorrow, and do this and show you and physically do it? Otherwise, you feel a bit lost, right? Because depending on what's going on the land and whether I'm there or not, there'll be different times where different amounts of kind of oversight will be available. And so what type of oversight, is best for you? What your goals might be. Let's take it from there. If you'll send as thorough an application as you can, I may not respond to, something brief and let's chat, because that's more likely to be something that consumes a lot more time, than you give back, right? So the more you can think it through and understand and list out things, the more you're doing the work that makes it easier to decide, like, oh, you could be good at this, or you could be good at, at this area there. So hopefully that gives you some good context, and please write if this seems like your cup of tea.